Ladies and gentlemen, I hunger, coward.
You are now listening to Retro Radio.
Welcome to another edition of Retro Radio, your only comprehensive online source for classic arcade and computer gaming emulation news and information. I'm Shane R. Monroe, your host. Welcome to the program. Welcome to the new structured look of Retro Radio. I've done some good overhauls of the graphics and formats, plus we should be working finally with the Real Player G2 final version, so hopefully no more G2 wrong version problems or plug-in problems or all the other things you've all written me about. We should be pretty good to go. Wow, a lot of things have been happening in the last few weeks, so I guess it's time for me to comment on all the hoopla that's occurring in the field of classic arcade game emulation. First off, Dave's Classics, once the greatest repositories of emulators and ROM images for those emulators, was taken offline for several days. Total silence, secrecy, and even Dave himself didn't know the fate of the page. Then it sort of magically came back, minus all of its ROMs. In fact, even all the public domain ROMs for the Vectrex and such were also gone. So, what happened? Everyone that asked me that at the time, and I wasn't really allowed to say. Now I'll reveal basically what went down in my own words. This isn't Dave talking here, it's me, and he's in no way affiliated with this segment's construction. So don't go and get medieval on him. This is me telling the story. For those of you who've been under a rock for the last few weeks, the IDSA, the Interactive Digital Software Association, is the white knight for most of the major software developers, including the big guys behind many classic arcade games, including Nintendo, Sega, Atari, also known now as Hasbro, etc. Their job, quote, exclusively dedicated to serving the business and public affairs interests of companies that publish video and computer games for video game consoles, such as Nintendo 64, Sega Saturn, and Sony PlayStation, personal computers, and the Internet, unquote. I want to point out that this, from their homepage, doesn't ever mention that they cover arcade games. The description of these services, quote, the IDSA offers services to entertainment software publishers, including a global anti-piracy program, government relations, what do you need government relations for entertainment, business and consumer research, what the hell is that, and First Amendment and intellectual property protection efforts, unquote. Okay, so I had a couple editorial jibes in there. So, what does this sound like to you? It sounds like a justify my paycheck sort of endeavor, doesn't it? Anyway, let's get back to Dave's Classics. We'll roast the IDSA later. Back to the Dave Classic story. Anyway, without warning, his page was pulled, and the emulation scene went into turmoil. It seems funny that the page would be down without some sort of warning or parting message. Hell, not even a goodnight kiss. The ISP worked something out with Dave, obviously, because the page did go back up with no ROMs, including the PD ones that were released freely. Now the once great giant has been brought down. It is worth noting that Dave's Classics is still the absolute best place for game emulators and news from the scene. Long live Dave'sClassics.com. Now let's talk about what doesn't make sense in this seemingly cut and dry story of copyright infringement squelched by the legal owner. First off, Dave's ISP apparently offered the site op of another popular site hosting with them. Now what the hell is up with that? This other site has the same type of, quote, illegal ROMs, unquote, that Dave's did. Things that make you go, Second, they've been awfully quiet. What makes everything so damn strange is that nothing seems cut and dry like it's supposed to be. Why would the ISP offer to host a rival page to Dave's? Now, something is definitely fishy in Emuland, and you can bet your ass when it all comes out, I'll be the one to fill you in on it. And since we're bitching about the IDSA and company, I want to discuss with you some of the other things that really piss me off about this vendetta that IDSA is taking against emulation. Go fire up your web browsers right now. I'll wait for you. And go take a look at this loser page. Okay, I'm going to wait for you. I know some of you running Internet Explorer will give you benefit of the doubt. www.gamepower.com/main main.html. Now, as a die-hard main fan, I personally am outraged and insulted by how these people try to take the credit for main and even offer contests for people that play it. Now tell me, isn't this sort of blatant commercialization much more significant than the little hobby sites that people have up? I think so. These are companies actually using main for gain, be it monetary or prosperity. And these guys have not been brought down. Obviously, because you're looking at them. And why haven't they been brought down? Great question. Personally, I have sent a half a dozen letters to the IDSA myself reporting this blatant site. Other people I know have also sent letters. Hell, I even sent a letter to Game Power themselves declaring them immoral for using name like that. I mean, damn it, look at the wording. We've added 200 new games and have fun on us. Hell, these guys are worse than Microsoft for trying to convince everyone they invented technology they didn't even so much as contribute to. So, tell me, doesn't this sound a bit like the schoolyard bully syndrome? Oh sure, let the IDSA go out and try to justify their paycheck by attacking sites they know can't afford to legally defend themselves, or they know will fold at the first sign of someone in a suit knocking on their door. But are the big bad IDSA afraid to play ball with the big boys like Game Power? I think so. I think the IDSA takes pleasure striking the little boys in the schoolyard, but then turns tails and runs when the lunch money ain't worth the price of a fight. Until the IDSA proves me wrong and starts pulling everyone down, they shouldn't expect the respect and compliance of the side ops. I mean, I believe the proper term is discrimination, and before too long, some ISP or other victim of the IDSA is going to wake up and realize they may have a litigious case against this group, this champion of copyright holders. According to my legal advisors, the IDSA can't actually take action against the site. The copyright owners themselves must actually get involved. When some ISP gets the balls and challenges these guys, we'll see how far these copyright holders are willing to go and how much money they are willing to spend to defend that 20-year-old non-money-making game ROM. If there are any actual attorneys out there that want to donate their services to this cause, feel free to drop me a line. I think there's a lot of prosperity out there to be made by standing up against this particular form of discrimination. And when you do get involved in this and you start making money, just remember it was my idea and cut me in. So what do I think about this new uprising against emulation? Well, I just got one thing to say. I told you so. Remember a show or two ago I told you about learning how to use FTP? Well, it's happening. With the world's largest dump of ROMs no longer in action, little sites like RetroGames.com get a chance at the spotlight dance. I give the scene another 3, maybe 6 months before nearly all ROM sites will be underground. So what happened? For those of you who may not have read or listened to the rest of the shows, exposure. Emulation was fine when we were playing 8-bit classics and 1980 arcade video games. Now enter Neo Geo, PlayStation, Nintendo 64 emulation. Bam! The hammer fell, and it fell hard, and it fell fast. It doesn't take Nostradamus to see the future in the emulation scene.
Even 6 months ago, Neo Geo games got implemented in Maine. And to quote a guy on the IRC channel, quote, someone left the gates open at the Lamer Village, unquote. Emulation traffic spiked. Why? Because instead of having a target audience of mellow late 20s, early 30 folks, now more emulation appealed to the teens other than Super NES and PlayStation. With more and more people interested, site traffic increased. Ad traffic on those sites increased, and the emulation outbreak of 1998 was in full swing. Now, this attracted the big boys, as does any market these cannibals think they can squeeze a pint of blood out of. Now, wait, now Hasbro, I want to just skip over it. Hasbro did it right. They bought the rights to the Atari games, they rehashed them for the 90s, and they're doing very well. Asteroid, Centipede, all of those seem to be doing fairly well because they keep pumping them out. Hasbro has not, that I know of, been directly involved with any emulation shutdown stings. Now, as you remember from a few shows ago, Nintendo is trying to justify their crusade by saying they're worried about Mario being compromised as an intellectual property because we're playing Donkey Kong for free. Sega, once thought to be with and for emulation, are rearing their ugly heads too. Microsoft totally screwed up with their lame-ass arcade, Return to Arcade and all those, that whole series. Namco is enjoying limited success with their PlayStation arcade game emulations. In fact, most everyone I know that has a PlayStation has actually bought these. Whoop! Classic gaming emulation, actually increasing the market. Must not be all bad. Basically what it all boils down to is that as long as there wasn't too much interest in the scene, everybody was happy. The EMU authors, the site ops, the players, and even the companies obviously didn't seem to have a problem. Now I'm afraid it's a little too late to save public emulation. I've stood up time and time again against the course of modern emulation. It's just a shame nobody listened. Fortunately, all the arcade games I could ever want have been emulated. And my feelings wouldn't be hurt one little bit if the entire classic arcade emulation scene shriveled up and died. Or, as what will likely happen, it will go underground. The part that cracks me up about the IDSA that they don't care the slightest that, one, they're hurting represented company confidence in a large group of people who are their direct consumers, and two, they aren't really stopping anything. They're simply driving it underground. And why not? They're justifying a paycheck, folks. They're justifying a paycheck. Now let's use the magic crystal ball here and see what's going to happen in the future. First, if you don't have FTP skills and the right connections, you might as well pack it up and start heading for the hills. Newbies won't have a leg to stand on, and this is already starting to happen in the IRC channel as well as the floods of email I'm getting. Where are the ROMs, man? And he'll be clicking porn banners for days to get a single Neo Geo ROM. The casual player will have a friend of a friend that will get him the ROMs. He'll be happy. Those connected well in the scene won't see much difference since they're already in an underground network of ROM acquisitions anyway. In many ways, I have to admit, I'm kind of excited about this. Soon, the lamer group of people that have been running around like a chicken with their heads cut off trying to get a merged Neo Geo ROM from Dave's Classics will simply give up and they'll go away. Or we'll get more lame utilities like ROMsWolf or something like that that'll help you search the net for ROMs and then not let you download anything because the servers are full. Emulation will once again be the privilege of those that contribute to the scene and nurture it, and not to those that exploit it or leech off of others. If you think those clicking banners are annoying now, expect it to get a hell of a lot worse. I'm even tempted to put up a porn banner page promising ROMs, then give out a public site that doesn't work. Seems to work for the other lamer groups. Now, don't forget the greedy ISP that will help these slimy site ops dupe the newbie emulation public until they get their registered letter from Sega and Nintendo. Hey, there's good money to be made in the downfall of emulation. So, what can you do? Nothing but sit back and watch the show. And the truth behind it is if you're not hooked up now, you better get hooked up because it's not going to get any easier from here. The worst part about it is a lot of the smaller sites that are starting to get the traffic and starting to get the spotlight that Dave's and the other big sites once had are starting to get greedy. Banners. I mean, I know site ops who are making good money off of emulation, which is not only illegal, but it's immoral. And the site ops that are out there that are doing this know exactly who I'm talking to. It's going to be time to pack up shop. And if you think it's not going to happen to you, your ISP is going to go frigid. They're going to kick you off. You're not going to get your ROMs moved to Hong Kong. You're going to find some loser little web hosting place that you're not going to get any bandwidth off of, and it's not going to work anyway. They'll all be shut down eventually, one way or another. It'll go underground. Okay, well, I've gone off on my soapbox for this episode, so let's get on to the good part of the show. And now it is time to return to a more simple age, a time when the games were great and the number of bits was 8. It's time for the 8-bit flashback. Here's this show's mystery 8-bit sound. Do you recognize this game? This 1983 game for the C64 and Apple II was certainly no headline maker. It wasn't released by one of the big companies and just kind of silently snuck in and swept dozens of hours of time away. The game, of course, is Dino Eggs. While not graphically the most impressive game, although you gotta admit, it ain't bad for the C64, the gameplay was very involving and enveloping. This is one of those kind of games where you feel you have a purpose and actually feel like you're making a difference based on your gameplay and not simply assassinating huge suicide squads, a la anything that runs on the Quake engine. More on this later. Dino Eggs is a single-player level-based platformer. The screen is fixed, so you don't actually have to scroll around. This makes it great for my little laptop with a real crappy display. Trust me, it's hard enough without the scrolling anyway. Your goal? Rescue Dino Eggs and hatched baby dinos from this level, or from each level, and warp them into a time where they'll be safe. You are Tim, the time traveler. Pretty simple. You start off the level in your only sanctuary, your warp field. Within this field, you are safe from almost all dangers of the level, except for the Dino Mom attack, and we'll cover that more later. This is also your point of departure with your collected Dino goodies. Throughout the level, you will find exposed eggs and hanging rocks hiding eggs, as well as bundles of wood. You collect the eggs, of which you can hold up to 3 at a time, unless you collect the occasional power pod hidden throughout the mini levels, or you can hold a single bundle of wood. When you can hold no more eggs, you must return to your warp and warp out, saving the eggs in your possession, also gaining you important points. You then re-warp back into the level in a new location. If you're holding wood and you try to put the wood upon another piece of wood, it starts a fire in that location. Now, the fire will kill you instantly if you happen to touch it once it's fully going. You can jump over it if you're nimble enough. And the fire's significance is that it keeps the Dino Mom away while it's burning. Also, any critter on the level that runs into it is also killed. The fire burns for right about 3 minutes or so and then goes out, and you better be finished with the level or at least have enough wood to build another one, because you won't make it long with the Dino Mom actively trying to stomp your ass into dog meat. As you might have guessed, there are tons of nasty creatures trying to remove the foreign element from their environment, namely you. As the level goes on, the nasties get worse, faster, and more plentiful. There are ground nasties, snakes, air nasties, which I still haven't figured out what quite to call them, and dropping spiders, and these are the big pain in the ass in more ways than one, and we'll talk about that more later too. If you get touched by one of these nasties, you become contaminated. You lose all the eggs you're carrying, and you can read this as, don't carry a bunch of eggs with you, visit the warp often, and your contamination tolerance level starts decreasing. If it reaches 0, you die. You get 3 lives. If you get contaminated, get your butt to the warp field and the contamination will be healed, but you still don't get the eggs back. If you get contaminated more than once, the rate of decrease of your contamination level will be even faster. If you get hit more than twice, expect not to make it back to the warp field. Oh, as a little bonus, if you're carrying a power module when you get contaminated, you also lose that too. And that's actually the biggest downer of all. Now, if this wasn't enough, let's add another element. The eggs that are exposed hatch. Yep, cute little dinos come out. In fact, they're so cute that you'll fall all over yourself trying to save them. Saving them is a bit more complicated than saving the eggs. First, they walk around the platform that they hatch on. Randomly, you never know which way they're going to start walking. If you touch them, you contaminate them and they die. You capture them by cleanly jumping over them, encasing them in a mini warp bubble, protecting them against all predators, like those nasty spiders, who will stop on the level the babies are on and capture them. Now, you can get them back by breaking the web that the spider's on, but the baby has to fall from their current location with the spider and land on a platform. Usually you get there a little too late. Once captured, you can get contaminated yourself, and they won't be lost. But to score the points and to save them, you have to warp out with them captured in the warp bubble. A few other goodies to note. First, you can't warp out from the level empty-handed. If you try, you are warned, and if you leave anyway, all eggs either exposed or hidden, and all the babies on the level are killed, and your score is lowered by the amount you left behind. The levels get unbelievably frantic, and you'll find yourself with like 10 babies captured and 9 eggs in your hand, only to get stomped by the Dino Mom. Oh, yeah, almost forgot, the Dino Mom. If you dally a bit too long on the level, and later on in the other levels, like right off the bat, Dino Mom will come. A huge-ass foot about a good quarter of the screen comes down and quickly stomps you. Most of the time, you can't get out of the way. The only real solution to the problem is to build a fire and keep one going. Spiders get to be damn smart, too, as levels go on. They drop on your head frequently, naturally contaminating you, and you lose all your eggs. Aside from the quite complex yet easy-to-pick-up elements of the game has something that it seems programmers can't figure out to do today. That addictive, enveloping play that not only gets you playing, but makes you feel obligated to play. When you see your first baby dino carried off by a spider and you can't save him, damn it, you will be sad. But things are so damn cute, and they make these cute little noises when they hatch. The hell with Tickle Me Elmo or Furby, give me a dino egg baby dinosaur for Christmas. This actually would probably make one hell of a PC conversion if someone wanted to take a stab at it. With 1998 graphics and all the dinosaur rage still popular today, a la Trespasser, this game could well do it, and do it well. It feels a bit console-ish, something kind of missing from PC games that attempt to fill this genre. The game basically is the only thing installed on my 486 laptop, and believe me, it gets lots of use, especially when my wife wants the computer. Anyway, the name of the game, Dino Eggs. You can get it at just about any of the C64 dump sites that you find. Those are still around. The IDSA doesn't seem to give a rat's butt about those. So go find your favorite C64 site, download Dino Eggs, install it, and play it today. You could certainly find nothing much better else to do with your time these days since you can't find any ROMs. Well, folks, that'll probably wrap the show up for this week. Those of you following Monroe World News knows that I basically got a new computer, and since I've been working on getting the kinks out. And even as a competent PC technician, I've had some interesting experiences. Throw on top of that my SCSI card took a dump, so that took the scanner and the zip drive out. Oh, well. Anyway, I went back to Windows 95 because my new G200 card seems to have a bad problem with graphics tearing in 98. Which is all the better since I can ditch that nasty space-taking IE4 now. Anyway, I hope you like the new look, and we'll be having a much longer, more in-depth show next time. Once again, thanks for taking time to listen to the show, and keep those letters coming. I do read and try to respond to each and every one. They really keep me going. I'm Shane R. Monroe from Monroe World and Retro Radio, and until next time,